Hello everyone, it's David again. I am here with Babylon 5 Season 2 Episode 10. Apologize for the long uploads, 2.5 days roughly since I last uploaded something. And you guys might hear a lot of growling and hissing and carrying on in the background. My two cats are still trying to introduce themselves. It's only been a week. And they like to, usually it's about 2 in the morning that they like to carry on and scratch and hiss and fight and all that stuff. Or as soon as I turn on the record button on my camera, then they always like to fight too, get my attention and sit there and yell at them. So anyways, Babylon 5, Season 2, Episode 10, GROPOS, which stands, I guess, for Ground Pounders. Can anyone in the military tell me anything about this? Every time I research the word GROPOS, or the acronym, it always comes back with Babylon 5 related stuff. So my best guess is that the phrase GROPOS is a JMS invention. So if any of you have any information otherwise, go ahead and pin it into the comments section. Anyway, nothing's supposed to be happening, and all of a sudden, bang, 6 Earth Alliance ship come through the jump gate. They are on secret orders. See, I told you, they're growling and hissing at each other now. Anyway, comes off a General Richard Franklin of the 356th Infantry Division. He's going to give Captain Sheridan a briefing at 0900 as to what the heck 6 Earth Alliance ships are doing coming through the jump gate. Anyway, he needs billeting for 25,000 people. Oh, sure, why not? You know, it's stationed at 250,000. They're certainly going to have billeting for that kind of people. And what are the rules for billeting in your country? I know our country, it's different. Should have looked it up before I made this thing, but anyway, it was such a concern to our founding fathers that they actually put billeting in our Constitution. No, nothing about workers' rights or anything about that, but boy, if you want to force us to house soldiers, you better pay us, darn it. Anyway, back to Babylon 5. Captain Sheridan says, hey, we've got Dr. Stephen Franklin, any relation? Yep, he's my son. Oh, well, I'll tell him you're here. No need. I will tell him as soon as I'm done with my other duties. And you get the distinct, the way this general is carrying on, that he and son don't see eye to eye on a lot of issues. Well, we cue the entrance to Babylon 5. General Franklin is played by Paul Winfield. Sadly, he died at the age of 64 in a lot of sci-fi kind of stuff. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, in my opinion, the best sci-fi movie ever made. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. He was the head of the starship that Chekhov was on. And I think if I remember right, didn't he get those bugs put in his ear too, along with Chekhov, by Khan himself? He's a Terminator, LA Law, 24 episodes of a sitcom called 227, and he also played Martin Luther King Jr. in the TV miniseries titled King in 1978. That's kind of also where I remember him from. We have Ryan Kutrina, who is playing Sergeant Major Plug. He's age 72. He's still with us. Yay. He's known for playing gruff military men in quite a few cameos and appearances, a long list of them, and I'll let you look that up on your own if you are so inclined. There's a Ken Foree, Foree. He plays Private First Class Large, and true to his name, he is he's 6'5" or 1.96 meters. Very big guy. Played Peter from Dawn of the Dead in 1978, and he has been in so many horror films that he actually has his own horror festival called the Foree, Foree Fest. Though I think it's only been like 3 of them, and the last one was, I want to say, 2013. So, with Morgan Hunter, who plays Private Kleist. He's been in Usual Suspects, Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. It's a 1997 video game. And he speaks Hungarian in 2 of his movies. Now, I don't know if that means he's of Hungarian ancestry or he just learned Hungarian for these movie parts. If any of you have any info, go ahead and put it down below. Let's see here. And then we have Marie Marshall, who plays Private First Class Dodger. She's 5'8" or 1.73 meters. She's from Dallas, Texas. She was on the soap opera As the World Turns from 85 to 88, and she's been in over 100 commercials. As they're bantering back and forth, General Garibaldi, or General Franklin, I should say, tells Michael Garibaldi, hey, I served with an Alfredo Garibaldi during the Dilgar War. And he's like, yep, that was my dad. He was a fine soldier. And he goes, yep, that's my dad. And he said, well, so much for genetics. Kind of a laugh in place there. We learned that the planet Octor is in open revolt against the Shalasan government. And Operation Sudden Death, there's an operational name for you. If I remember right, doesn't the military come up with these names by random computer thing where they take out any terms that might be offensive to somebody, and then it comes up with a random generic name? If I've heard that somewhere. If any of you have any knowledge of that, go ahead and put it down below. Anyway, Operation Sudden Death, they want to jump in and end the rebellion. Evidently, Sheridan served there with some climbing expeditions or something, and that's the other reason General Franklin, I keep getting my general and my doctor mixed up. Kind of like we had a Dr. Tim and a Reverend Tim, and they were father and son at where I used to work, and I was constantly getting their names backwards. Anyway, General Franklin noted that Sheridan served there and said, you're familiar with the area, and so that's a reason I picked Babylon 5. Plus, Babylon 5 is the closest jump point to Octor. And General Franklin bears new weapon systems from Babylon 5. And so that becomes extremely important as this series goes on. These upgraded weapon systems will allow Babylon 5 to take on a starship. And ironically, starships from the Earth Alliance itself. And their objective is to take Maytok, I guess, is the planet, and that's where Sheridan served. General Franklin meets up with his son, Dr. Franklin, and he's talking about the status of his sisters. He says, makes the quote, of course, if you called your mother more often, you'd know all that. And it's ironic because I can't speak to the military aspect. I do know a little bit about the military. Having been born and raised in Alaska, there is a ton of military presence there for obvious reasons. And also because my best friend, his dad was a 3-star general. In nursing school, my friend Tim, his dad was a 3-star general. So I got a lot of, and also I did some nursing, like my pediatrics rotation was actually at Madigan Army Hospital in Tacoma, Washington. And it's interesting because I said, hey, Tim, you're never going to believe this, but I finally met the father of this family I take care of, because he was always out on work or something like that. And I said, you're not going to believe it, but he's got a bunch of stars like your dad. And he goes, oh, you mean like 2 on this side and 2 on... I said, no, more than that. He's got 4 on this side and 4 on that side. And he's like, David, you idiot, that's the commander of all the U.S. forces on the West Coast. And I'm like, so? Extremely, there is, and the reason is there is a perception of kids in the military, or kids of generals especially, of being brats. Because I always asked my friend, why don't you put, because he could put these little star stickers, meaning I'm the family member of a general in his, and we could have parked way at the front. Instead, we had to park way at the back of the parking lot in the hospital and walk all the way to the front. And I'm like, well, why don't you? And he goes, David, I don't want people to know. And I was also under strict orders to tell nobody on the Army base that his dad was a general. He was an Air Force general, so nobody would have known that unless you tell them. And because the perception is that kids of generals are brats. And so, and I told my other friends who were in the, and they're like, yeah, some of them, the kids of generals are just absolute little tyrants. Because you're my dad's General so-and-so, you have to do what I say. And my friend Tim was like, I don't want to be known. So there's already, we're dealing with that here a little bit. And we're also dealing with, and I can tell you a lot about doctors. Doctors, to say that we abuse doctors and that they are always on call and always is the understatement of a century. I remember very specifically, I had one doctor who was on call Friday night, and for the weekend, so it was Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, till Monday morning after he finally would cue the residents and go off. And we asked him, we were like, Doctor, how many hours of sleep did you get this weekend? Because we were constantly calling him in the middle of the night. And he said 4.5 hours. Now, when I say 4.5 hours, I don't mean 4.5 hours Friday night, 4.5 hours Saturday night, 4 hours Sunday night. I mean 4.5 hours the entire weekend. Some nights he would go home, he ate like half a sandwich, and he was so tired that he took like a 45-minute nap and then got up and was back at the hospital. So, and that's when one of our CNAs turned around and jokingly asked him, you're single, aren't you, doctor? And he's like, yeah, I'm single. Because, most wives wouldn't put up, and I heard now that he's actually married one of our ICU nurses, and they've had a couple kids. I can guarantee you, she probably put a stop to a lot of that. It's like, honey, you really don't need to go to the hospital for that. The floor nurses can take care of it. They have protocols to deal with this sort of thing. Trust me, I know. But anyway, so we're dealing with a general that's kind of stoic and hard to communicate with, and we're dealing with a doctor who hardly ever communicates because he's too damn busy, or makes himself too damn busy. Because it seems to be ironic, the married doctors seem to have not as much time as the single doctors. The married doctors are, I had one doctor, though, joke with me that he saw me more often than he saw his wife that weekend. And he said, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, it gives you an idea of what JMS is getting at here, about you have two groups, one is stoic and the other one's never around, and how they are trying to communicate, and in some instances just not communicate. When General Franklin said to Dr. Franklin, if you called your mother more often, you'd know these things, I absolutely understood right away where that general was coming from. And it sets up the whole dynamic for this episode. Anyway, it seems this General Franklin was retired and called back into service. So right away, a lot of people can guess this guy was, he was of some importance if you call him back to service. Because my understanding is that is very rarely done, unless it's a major war going on. General Franklin made a kind of in my opinion, an unwarranted. He said they're talking about aliens, and getting Dr. Franklin to come back to Earth Dome, saying that aliens are a threat to humanity and always will be. I think JMS and a lot of the liberal, because I'm a kind of liberal myself, I'm sure you guessed, but having grown up with the military, I think a lot of the liberals underestimate the military's ability to be progressive, I guess, would be the where I'm trying to get here. I don't think most military men and women I know of would make a statement like that. A lot of them are much more progressive and forward thinking than you give them credit for. For instance, when Trump was of the opinion that the military would do whatever he wanted them to do as far as overthrowing the 2020 election, I'm like, no, military, and the liberal media was having a heyday with that. I'm like, look, I'm telling all my liberal friends, look, the military is never going to side or try and overthrow President Biden. Okay, January 20th, he is going to take the oath of office no matter what Donald Trump or anyone else has to say about it. And in fact, now that some of these memos are being leaked to the press, we all know that the highest generals were like, no, I am not going to do this. Come hell or high water, in January 20th, Joseph R. Biden will be the new president, no matter what Donald Trump or anyone else says. So I think the military men and women that I know of wouldn't make a statement of, aliens are a threat to humanity and they always will be. Of course, that gets into a father and son fight. Now, I have lost my father. He died in 1991 due to cigarette smoking. And I've got to tell you, to everybody watching this, having been a nurse for many years, I've seen a lot of these types of fights. And let me tell you something, never, ever, ever leave mad when you're in a fight with somebody that you love. Because I cannot tell you how many times where people get into an argument, one spouse takes off to go to work, and that spouse is killed. And now the other spouse is sitting here having to live with the last words that this person heard from me, their loved one, was a bunch of invective or hate coming from my mouth. I had one mother who had gotten in a fight with her teenage daughter. Her daughter then went on an airplane ride with some of her friends. The airplane crashed. It was a little, like a Piper, I don't know if it ran out of fuel or what happened, but the plane crashed, killed everybody on the plane except the daughter. Fortunately, it left her in a coma. And so here's this mother trying to come to terms with the fact that her daughter is in a coma. She doesn't know if she's going to come out of it or not. And the last words that she heard from her own mother was a bunch of angry words said in a fight. Sadly, about 7 days later, the daughter died, never having regained consciousness. So, my biggest advice to everybody out there, if you have somebody, especially if they're going off like to my dad, I went off to nursing school. We actually didn't fight or anything like that. We were actually talking about the Super Bowl. Just please, one word of advice is never leave angry. Whatever you have to do, just say, I'm sorry. Sometimes that's, or, honey, I love you. Let's kiss and we'll talk more about it or whatever. But try and do something to leave on a positive note, because you never know. And especially if you've got a dad in the military, you never know. You never know. They all thought he was retired, and they were all, and all of a sudden here he is. He's being called up on a top secret mission. And, a general leading a mission is a prime target for rebels. Anyway, so we learned that his dad, General Franklin, was liberator of the African bloc. So it seems that humans haven't gotten over their taste of war, even on Mother Earth. And Ivanova goes to Dr. Franklin. Oh, he's talking to Dr. Franklin's complaining to Ivanova. Dad always says the force is first and everything else is second. Ivanova says, hey, don't make the same mistake I did with my dad. Talk this over and hash things out. And Franklin's like, what? Of course, Ivanova knows that he's going off on a top secret mission, that he might be killed. Dr. Franklin doesn't know this. It's in a top secret mode, so only Sheridan, Ivanova, and Garibaldi know what's actually going to happen. So, we meet a lady named Dodger, very aggressive female military lady, Marine, and she strikes up a friendship with Garibaldi, and they make out in his quarters and kind of end things on an awkward note because Garibaldi's had a couple bad relationships, and she's like, "Look, pal, I'm not in this for the relationship. I'm just in this to, to make a little love," as they say in the song. Make a little love tonight. Who was that? It was one of the Kool in the gang. Anyway. So they end up leaving it on a semi-awkward footing. Stephen and his Jad end up hashing out their differences. Michael Garibaldi ends up kind of saying, "I'll see you later" to Dodger as she's going off, and they kind of make up a little bit, and anyway, she goes off to fight the war in Akdor at the Shalasan government to take the fortress of Maytok. I don't know why we need to know all that, but anyways, we now zip on over to an ISN report, and they're reporting on the actual clash on Akdor, and all of a sudden here is Stephen Franklin's dad, boom, right on the screen. He has survived the assault, and everything goes good for Franklin. However, the scene tragically ends when we find out that all of Dodger's unit has been killed. In an ironic note, Dodger does come back during the Brakiri Day of the Dead. So, kind of makes you wonder, it's like, could you make out with someone who you know is dead? That would freak me out. I don't think I could do that, to make out with someone who's dead. But anyway, if any of you are in the military or in the medical profession, talk about how you communicate with your families, and if you've had trouble, like JMS portrays here in Babylon 5. I can kind of see on the medical side, Dr. Franklin not communicating with his family enough, because doctors, I can tell you right now, they are slaves to their profession. And nurses, we tend not to be, because but sometimes we do. My mom used to complain that she never saw enough of me, even when she was staying at a nursing home just across town from where my apartment was. And I'm like, well, Mom, I'm still trying to, hold up the walls for the hospital. So her idea was to move from Portland over back to where she used to live in Nowhere, Nevada. So instead of, 10 miles away from me, she's now 700 miles away from me. But anyway, that's a whole other bowl of apples to get into. But anyway, if any of you have any thing to comment, please comment down below. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share. We are 55 subscribers. Let's get it to 100 by Thanksgiving if we can. Anyway, hope you all have a good rest of your day.